Frank Lloyd Wright was born on June 8, 1867, in Richland Center, Wisconsin. His mother was a teacher, and his father was a preacher and a musician. Frank Wright was a boy who loved the outdoors. He loved to be outside where he could admire everything, whether it was covered in snow or green. In 1885, he enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, majoring in civil engineering. He had 2 jobs while he was going to school. He worked for the dean of the engineering department and assisted acclaimed architect Joseph Silsbee with the construction of the Unity Chapel. This is what convinced him that he wanted to be an architect. He dropped out of school to work with Silsbee in Chicago. In 1893, he designed this home, known as the Winslow House in River Forest. This was the first example of Frank Lloyd Wright's revolutionary style. It was later called organic architecture. It had horizontal emphasis and an expansive open interior space design. Falling Water Residence was one of his most well-known architectural designs and was built in the mid-1930s. Wright was almost 70 years old, and his public hype seemed to have died down until he suddenly burst into the public eye again with this shockingly stunning and original piece. It was built with a series of balconies and terraces constructed on top of a waterfall in southwestern Pennsylvania. Falling Waters is now a national landmark and considered one of the most beautiful houses ever built. Frank Lloyd Wright's home and studio is often referred to as his laboratory because this is where he experimented with concepts that led to his own personal style of architecture. This was Wright's first home. The most special feature of this house is the studio balcony. The Robbie House was completed in 1910 and one that was designed for Frederick C. Robbie. The Robbie House is the most innovative and forward-thinking of all the Wright's prairie houses. The outside of the house is made of bands of brick and limestone. The inside of the home is meant to be light-filled. He used windows that also had iridescent colors of clear and colored glass and patterns of diamonds to make floral forms. In this house, Wright achieves a balance between transparency and enclosure, almost making the nature flood into the interior space. Storer House was built in 1923 in Los Angeles, California. It is one of 4 Frank Lloyd Wright Mayan Revival-style houses. Wright used textile boxes to fit the home along the hillside. He wanted it to look like a man-made extension of the landscape. The interior of the house is dominated by a large living room and high ceilings. The house has a total of 2,967 square feet. Although this house is considered one of Wright's great masterpieces, the textile block trend never did catch on as Wright hoped. Since rich people were typically hiring Wright to build their houses, the low-cost block method did not make much sense to them. Taliesin was located in Jones Valley, Wisconsin, and is known as a driftless area with unusually hilly landscape and deeply carved river valleys. This location is where his family lived. He chose the name Taliesin because of a poem he read. The title means shining brow or radiant brow. The house has 3 sections and features Wright's typical prairie design. Windows were placed so that sun would shine through the openings at every time of the day. The finished house was about 12,800 square feet. Innes House was the largest of the 4 textile block houses designed by Wright. It was built in 1924 for Charles Innes and built by Frank's son, Lloyd Wright. The house was around 6,200 square feet, and the construction used more than 27,000 concrete blocks that were all handmade using decomposed granite found on site. Today there is an Innes House Foundation to complete the rehabilitation and maintenance of the house. It was bought for about $4.5 million by Ron Burkle, who is committed to the preserving of this iconic house. A school was dedicated to Wright called Taliesin Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture. It is keeping the spirit of Wright alive. He died at age 89 on April 10, 1959, but the school is based off of Wright's fundamental elements of fine arts, including drama, music, and more. According to the school's website, taliesin.edu, more than 80% of its graduates actively engage in the field of architecture. The Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture builds upon the foundation of the educational ideas of Wright and interprets them within the context of our rapidly changing world, letting his legacy live.